Yeah. As far as I know, we are in lives right now.
Yeah. Hello. Okay, I guess Zaid has some issue with his internet. So yeah, we can continue further. So yeah, today we are be talking about anti-China movement that's currently running in the West, but also we can see the tripling effect that's coming over here in the East as well. Like many of the countries who has strong ties with the Western economies, they're too echoing the same, like or Japan or Australia, or it coming up Korea, the South Korea that we are talking about, we're also echoing the same. Even coming to the point of like the controversy regarding the WHO leniency with China.
Haska, can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you.
I'm sorry that actually I faced some technical difficulty today, so I'm very much late. About this, like 40 minutes late, as well as you're facing some problem for going live. Still, we are live for the last 1 and 44 seconds
Yeah,
actually,
2 minutes.
and
Yeah.
today we'll talk about very interesting topics. Okay, forget about the technical problems. We are very much interesting topics actually. I like these topics, such as that anti-China movement in the West. And from today, I'm talking from the West, and you are right now in East. So let's find out the discussion from East and West, what's happening around the world on anti-China movement. Yeah, it's a very much important on my sense, because the upcoming decade, the after the COVID-19 scenario, the world we are expecting, I think that this will be a change world, and maybe racism will increase. We find out the Brexit from our headquarters in London. We find out the Brexit, and after the Brexit, now there is but after before the Brexit, there is a movement like no problem with the yellow people, problem with the brown, problem with the black, but now yellow under under racism. So yellow also are facing the racism in the West, because still now racism actually focus, especially focus on black and brown, but in the new era I think yellow under attack. So what is the is there any good part? I don't think any good part for racism, but yeah, we can find out some good part for Eastern countries and some bad part for on the world. So today we'll discuss about it, and Oscar is one of the expert about this. Those people are watching actually. And this is the suggestion for them, that Oscar is one of the expert on this issue. So rather spending more time, we are going to live now.
Okay. So coming to the point of this anti-China rhetoric, is this is not something like very new. If you go around the history of America, like mostly the western coast, like the San Francisco, you can see the San Francisco is mostly having Asian people. These were like in the early 20th century, most of the immigrants that America had after like the Europeans, the stream of Europeans that came in the 19th century and in the 18th century were these Chinese people. So they were having a lot of influx of Chinese population as well as few Japanese at that time in the US. So there was this particular law is that's called Chinese Exclusion Act. So the Chinese Exclusion Act, which um, barred Chinese people to immigrate to USA. So this is not something new, and this is something that I believe would continue whenever there will be crisis coming up. Now we can see that this
Again,
coming to the point of racism or is a part of politics. I would say this is part of identity politics or the power struggles that's running at this point in the world. For example, like if your interest is being hurt, obviously they won't be taking you really well. The same came up when Japan was ally of the West in the First World War, and when in the Second World War Japan was against the West, the American Japanese were put, I won't say in a concentration camp, but in a camp, restricted camp, so that because they considered every Japanese back then could be a potential spy or a potential, I would say, informer to the Japanese kingdom back then. So this thing will continue. These things will continue when there is a power struggle, obviously, in the West. This
Uh,
racism or
okay.
xenophobia.
If we think about the anti-China movement, is there any possibility? Starting from the currency, from the money background, is there any possibility in coming future that there should be another Chinese belt like China is trying to make, and there should be another economy which is dependent on China. China will make another economy, another currency, and another world. And one world is dominated by US solely. Still now it's going on, but under table. But in the front of the table, is there any possibility that up front of the table there is two globe? That one is China lead globe, one is actually anti-China globe.
Yeah, there's high possibility. The reason behind is like if you look at the Belt and Road Initiative or the Chinese loan, because at this point only China in the world has the highest amount of reserves in their bank, so they're easily using up this money, funding up the Belt and Road Initiative around the Eastern Asian countries, as well as they're heavily investing in Africa. And the reason behind that is purely putting them, as they say in the West, in a debt trap. Because if you want to have money from the West, since last century, it was very evident that if you want to have money from the West, you have to have democracy, you have to have transparency, etc., etc. Which, in case of you don't have Chinese money, is much easier. China really doesn't care if you're an authoritarian government or a democratic government. They give you money very easily. But what happens the next is like if you're not being able to pay that up, China is coming up to help you. The Hambantota port in Sri Lanka is a very good example of that one. Like the Sri Lankan government, the China, I would the one that was lenient to China, that took a lot of money to build a port on Hambantota as well as an airport near to it. Now, after building the port, what happened in Sri Lanka that they are not being able to utilize those ports, and that resulted them not being able to pay the installments that they were supposed to pay to China. So how did they help? The China came up, okay, fine, we're going to help you out. How we're going to help you out? Taking the lease for 99 years. So though they are having this port like for commercial uses, as thinkers say that they can, if they want, they can bring the militaries over there, and that is a very
True.
like is a very concerning part for India as well, and also the Western Bloc too, because they want to imply their hegemony in the Indian Ocean, because if they can control over the Indian Ocean, they can control the trade from the China, because America has a very strong hold in the Pacific. So any if America want to block China in the Pacific, they can, but they obviously need India and other allies in the Indian Ocean region. So right now, at this point, when Russia and China, few probably a month or two back, they have declared that they would not consider dollar as the primary currency among themselves. They can easily push this notion to the countries where they have this Belt and Road Initiative and where they have put them in the debt trap. So it's very obvious this can happen, that we would see like one part of the world they're using dollar, and the other part of the world they're using probably Chinese yuan. It's very much possible.
Okay. I have another question. At this moment, we know that about China, but there is a hegemony about Russia in the Western world, because Russia is another challenge for the Western world. So if there
Exactly.
is a block for China, there is a block for West, what will be the position of Russia as a Eastern and Western country of Russia? What do you think? Russia will be Eastern or Western?
So far, Russia would be Western. Like historically, it has been like I would say that like the whole scenario is coming up at this point is somewhat like many thinkers say Cold War 2.0. is all about like the all those countries who were in the communist bloc back in the Cold War era. Now, though they have been coming out from the domain of communism, like though we say CCP in China, but it's a state capitalism, right? There have been a lot of change in Deng Xiaoping back in back in the 70s, back in the 70s and 80s, most probably the 80s, yeah, 80s. So there have been a change, like China is allowing private ownership. The show is Russia, but they are right now coming back with the point that they want to have this old glory of the bipolar world. That's what they are looking for. China, you can see that China is now having the last fiscal in the last budget. They had like $250 billion for the military budget, which has been really higher. Like since so far, I remember like last few years when I was checking like Chinese military budget spending, that's a huge increase. Because a few years back when I was discussing about this with someone on Facebook, I remember. Then I checked like Chinese military budget was around $100 billion, so that has increased to 258. That's like 2.5 times more within this past 5 years. That's a huge. Even US couldn't go that far, though still US has the largest amount of military expenditure at this point. So, and one more thing that Russia as well as China is heavily investing on improving their military technologies. Like they are sending the clear message that like US dominated world is something that will be a history because they are preparing them very well.
Okay.
And one of the very good example of that, the hypersonic missile test that Russia has done through, and that has a very good capability of dodging all those anti-missile systems that the US has, the THAAD or the NORAD. They can easily just dodge them up and reach their target really well.
Okay, so I have a question now about the globalization. We can see that around the world, people, especially who are for in the terms of China, we think about all the yellow people actually, all the peoples who have this
Yeah.
Mongolian and caste actually. So we find out that a lot of scientists, a lot of expertise around the world comes from this country, and they are now citizen of the Western countries. They belong to the Western country. They represent this country. So,
Mhm.
and the number is increasing every day, day by day. For the last 100 years, the number is increasing. After the globalization, we find out that many Chinese people, many yellow people actually around the world in leading position in Western countries. Do you
Mhm.
think this number will decrease and they will go back to their own country again?
I clearly do not think so. The thing is that with Russia or China or North Korea and many other similar countries, maybe I won't name all of them. The thing is that in these particular countries, only those who are related to the power, not only those I'm talking about all those like the leaders, all the political, but also like those oligarchs, I would say, or those bureaucrats or those like elites who are with them, that under the favor of the ruling party, they are having the favor in those countries. If you see, like after Xi Jinping, when Xi Jinping came to power in 2008, he started a campaign for anti-corruption, which many thinkers say was actually meant for exterminating or like exterminating his political opponents. So what happened at that point that many of those Chinese elites or those who were I would say having a favorable condition in the Jiang Zemin's era, they have been investing heavily in the US and Canadian and other Western countries for those golden visa, or it's the invest immigrant visa, to get the citizenship or have us get out of the country. Also, if you know about Macau, right? Macau,
Yeah,
China.
Macau.
Macau,
Yeah.
China is, you can say, the Las Vegas of the East, because over there this is a route. This is a route through which money gets into China and money gets out of China. Both of the things are happening over there, because once you take the money within the casino, you just lost the track of the money. It's out of the blockchain, you can say, or it's
Yeah,
out of the
Bangladesh lost the money. Bangladesh Bank lost the money in the is
yeah,
about it.
because that's what I was about to bring. Like the North Korean hackers, they draw the money from the Bangladesh bank's reserve from the New York, and they shifted that to the Philippines. That went to Macau to China, and then in the North Korea. So see, through Macau, China, and many other, like even Vietnam was having an issue uh, of having like Vietnam, as well as like they were having probably Vietnam. I'm sorry, it's Cambodia. It's Cambodia. There was this border village where there was heavy investment of Chinese casino. Even the same was happening. Even one of these U.S. islands, U.S. controlled territories, Guam, they were building up this huge casino. And what was the all this reason behind it? This because Chinese, all those wealthy Chinese people who want to get out of the money out of the country, they use this casino or all these gateways to flush their money out of the country. That's why Russia and China has one of the highest money laundering cases worldwide, and that's the reason why, because they want their money to be shifted over there, and those who now are in this Western society, they won't go back. Why? Because the government know that they have taken their money away. So once they go back, what will happen the next, we all know. So obviously they won't be going back anyway soon.
Okay, so you think about anti-China movement, but what do you think about the future? Like Western countries, the big countries. So if we think about the European Union, we know that a little bit far, conservative, a little bit far in United Kingdom right now, ruling party in United Kingdom, as well as we can see that the party who some of the European countries like is the party who is ruling in right now, Italy and some Sweden and some other countries. And they are actually even Brazil. Actually, they are like a far right, rightist party. So
Yeah.
after this COVID-19, do you think the rise of this actually far right group will be increased?
There are high chances, I would say, that they would get a pure momentum. The reason behind is that if you see the global pandemic, that's I like if you remember, like about a month ago, I was written that this pandemic has proved that the globalization is a myth. This is kind of a fact that they will use this whole thing as a propaganda. That see, if you go for like too much of liberalism, if you have so many people getting into your country, the disease spreads quickly. But honestly speaking, if we go back to the history, all this pandemic have most of the times in the history, this pandemic have been going from one continent to another continent. If we say about the Black Death in Europe, it started all the way from Asia. Even it's said that
I mean,
90% of the population of Americans were not killed by the arms. Rather, they were killed by these diseases that were brought all the way from Europe. And the same, the syphilis disease was actually imported like all the way from Americas to Europe and then spread rest of the world. So they will use this rhetoric for sure, and this is the reason why they would be able to use it very well, because most of the people we say, like the general people that we talk about, are not really aware of the history, because the history is something like for many people is a very boring stuff. They don't really do not like to go through this. But what happens that we, if we don't go through the history, we miss the learning part of the history, which is very important. So they will use the rhetoric and they can come up, you know, having more political momentum, but that will be a very severe, I would say that will have a severe backlash for Europe for sure. Because at this point, when the global interdependence has increased and we are much more dependent and dependent to one another, coming to the point of this consumer basic economy that we are having worldwide, it will be very tough for them for sure.
Okay, so we think about the anti-China movement. There is a rising of, so we can give a conclusion like this. There is an anti-China movement, and the possibility of anti-China movement is very high.
Yeah.
The people mentality also changing for the COVID-19. It's and President like Donald Trump endorsing that it's come from China, so it's Chinese virus. So the anti-China movement is increasing Western countries and rise of the actually this far right group is also increasing. So who will be the actual beneficiary after this all this thing actually? Who is the after main beneficiary? Is the China beneficiary or Western country?
All right. So yeah, this will be like the answer will be really long. So let me go by part of part. Like um, President Trump quoting this particular phrase that the Chinese virus is not something new. If you remember, the H1N1, like we call it swine flu. If you remember swine flu, we had
Yes.
the outbreak back in 1918. It was named as Spanish flu, and the reason is that because Spain was the first place where they like came out. I would say that they have detected this flu, but
The
frankly
first,
speaking,
yeah.
the origination was from the US, most probably on the
Yeah,
US,
it's come
and
from the US actually.
yeah, it came from the US with their troop. It went to the trenches in the First World War, and then like in Spain, they first identified this. So it's Spanish flu. The same if you go for Japanese smallpox or the Black Death of Europe. All these things, it has always been named by the flu. So I would say the same with the Chinese, would be say same with the Chinese as well. But obviously we know that we have two China, though like people in the like none of the China believes there are two China, but in the reality there's two China, the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China. And yeah, mostly we are talking about this People's Republic of China. So this far right movement will definitely, and like who will be the one beneficiary. If you're talking about, there are a lot of beneficiaries will come up. For example, I would go like if I say about Japan already have declared their fiscal stimulus package that if the companies move out of China, it can be Japan or it can be anywhere other than China or the People's Republic of China, we would say, they would get the fiscal stimulus package. So I would say that India, then South Bangladesh, Bangladesh, ASEAN countries, they have a very good future, I would say, because the global dependence, the heavy dependence on China has also proved that it can create a backlash. In 2003, when SARS outbreak was there, the world economy had a very bad impact on it. But at that point, that time, sorry, the world economy was not that much dependent compared to now. And when the COVID-19 outbreak was there in the January in the China, there was shortage of medical supply already in the US. The aisle got empty. So this pharmaceutical companies having pressure from this interest group to bring back those manufacturing back in the US. The beneficiaries will be in that case beneficiaries might be the US people, or maybe there will be like heavy investment or automation will go on just to say that so that they can diversify. So these are the like I would say this emerging many more economies, and automation will have the direct benefit. But we have to realize the fact that still China has a lot of rare earth materials which is required for the electronics. They have a lot of sources for those raw metals that we need for this medicine and all these things. So we would say that we won't be able to totally get off with the dependence on China. Still, we'll need China for those rare earth metals, for those raw materials and the reagents. So I would say, like
Okay.
like getting away
Okay.
from China is a very move.
Okay, can I ask one thing? Like, okay, we find out that there is a rising of anti-China movement and the all are beneficiary, but how about the South Asian politics? Like for a country like Bangladesh, for a country like Bangladesh, India, and Pakistan, those people, those country actually were neutral in the century to century. Our foreign policy was actually neutral. From the father of the nation of Bangladesh mentioned it,
Mhm.
friendship to all and malice to none. This is the main foreign policy motto for Bangladesh foreign policy. So if we think about the Bangladesh foreign policy, who are the main import, they export in West but import from East. So this import and
Mhm.
export business, which is main business of Bangladesh, they bring import from China the raw material and
Mhm.
they make the things and export in West. Bangladesh is like the handling the middle thing. So how Bangladesh will challenge this critical diplomacy, because he needs the friendship with all of them.
Okay. Yeah. So in these cases, if you see that the whole this anti-China thing started not actually from the start of the COVID-19. It started when there was trade sanctions back, like by the Trump,
From US
or I would
president,
say
yeah.
the tariff, not sanctions, I said the tariff, yeah, from USA. So after that, there have been a heavy investment that's going on in the infrastructures, even in Bangladesh. So what will happen? The Chinese company, they can easily have the investment in India, in Bangladesh, in ASEAN countries, in Africa. They will have their companies shifted over here, having the manufacturing done, and then shipped it. So finally, it will be labeled that assembled in probably in Bangladesh, or made in Bangladesh, made in India, or made in Vietnam. But then it will be the same. That
Yeah,
is
yeah,
their company coming over.
I got the story of Ilishmas. You know that in
Because
England.
just I would like to add one thing. The I am currently using a Chinese brand phone, the Xiaomi Redmi 8 Note 8,
Yes.
but it is actually made in India. If I open it up, it's made in India. I get all those Indian apps and Indian features that's coming up. Indian logged on every single information I'm getting over there, and they're having even their this power bank assembling plant in India. So the process has already started, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. There is some. Actually, I can share you one thing that in United Kingdom, for some reason, but United Kingdom actually make stop importing fish from Bangladesh. But there is a lot of Asian people lives in actually United Kingdom, so they have the demand, especially Ilish. We can't find Ilish from other places. So at that time, we find out in
Yeah.
the shop that the Ilish comes from Bangladesh, the product of Myanmar. Actually, Bangladesh export it to Myanmar first, then when the packet in the name of Myanmar, then actually export it here. So it will comes like this way. I think you mentioned that the story of Ilish, they will follow this way.
Yeah, like for example, the sanctions that's going on, like on North Korea and Iran, like the method you said, this is how they actually, I would say that dodge the sanctions. Like the first, it is shaped like, for example, you can see the Kim Jong Un using using a Mercedes car, but they are not supposed to use it. How they get in? They just ship it to first to China, then to Korea. Then there's some random ship taking it to Russia. Then that car is entering by land in Korea. So this is how it goes on. People get creative and find their way to dodge these sanctions and get things in this country. It has been like always
Mm,
since
Okay,
antiquity.
I have a very much serious thing in my mind. Like, that Bangladesh dependency, especially on European and Western market on garment sector, this is one of the main source of Bangladesh income. Another main source is actually human resource, especially in the Middle East. And for this COVID-19, both of these resources are heavily infected because, like, I can give you an example, like Primark. Usually most of the things in Primark is the one of the largest chain in European market, and which is very cheapest and largest chain in European market for the clothes. And most of the things comes from China. Comes from Bangladesh. But for the last 1 month, every shop of Primark is closed, and for the 1.5 month, I think they will open after 2-3 months. But the shopping habit will also change. People are very much worried about the safety. People are very worried about the food safety net and hygienic net and health issue rather than the shopping for the clothes. So at this scenario, that and if there is anti-China movement going on of the world, at that point that market will actually more smaller for Bangladesh. So in that scenario, what will be the suggestion for Bangladesh? Can Bangladesh get any chance to develop themselves, or Bangladesh will suffer for this anti-China movement?
Well, it totally depends upon how the policymakers is going to react to this whole scenario, frankly speaking. Because unfortunately over here, what happens the most that we are not really that responsive how it should be for for an emerging economy. We need to be very responsive in this case. So if there's an anti-China movement, obviously, like they would like all the manufacturing or sources to be shipped from China to away to somewhere else. Now, we usually say that Bangladesh is the second most RMG exporting country. Sounds a lot, but if you go to the scenario, actual scenarios, the difference between the first and the second is very high. China exports more than $100 billion of RMG, and we around 30. So this anti-China movement has a very great potential for us. If they move away from China, we can grab this opportunity. It depends upon how smooth we can make our ports and how
Um,
smooth.
okay, I have a initial question that we know that for when it comes from anti-China movement in the first stage, like 5-10 years ago, we know that many Chinese companies shifted in, like especially in Vietnam and Philippines. So, is there any chance of them they come out from all the yellow nation and come to brown countries? Is there any chance like Bangladesh and Pakistan or India can get this opportunity? Chinese company will transfer here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like they would get this opportunity. I would, if they have all those process, the bureaucratic process that we have when an FDI gets into the country. Also, the port. China. So far, I remember China is one of those country like who would like to invest in the deep seaport in Cox's Bazar, but like there was an Indian intervention to that one. So if government can tackle this scenario, if we have the deep seaport, so that we can easily have our goods exported in large ship that usually we call mother vessel. It will be
Actually,
easier for them to keep all the lead time and send those have those manufacturing done and exported to the west. They can have
okay, but now I have a question. Like, if you think about our neighbor, you already mentioned about Hambantota in Sri Lanka. We know about the largest port of Pakistan was constructed by China,
Guangtan.
and China make the belt route of with Pakistan also, and they're good. They are investing in Sri Lanka also. For Hambantota is a good example. Even they are making rail network with the Nepal also as a landlocked country to reduce the dependency to India. So at this point, actually, but I don't think Bangladesh have this much investment from China. So making relationship in a balance with India and China, Bangladesh is now backward. What do you think about this?
Well, Bangla already China is investing in the metro and the project that I would say that uh, the Padma Bridge that we are talking about. But as I say, China is also has interest in having deep sea water port. But yeah, the relation with India is also very important for Bangladesh at this point, having being a very large trading partner. So Bangladesh is kind of in between the two. It's like being getting sandwiched between the two breads and the two two upcoming superpowers is India and China. It's like it's all about like how they can tackle it out, but it's definitely a tough choice for Bangladesh.
So okay, I'm coming to the final question, almost final question. That what do you think about the Rohingya crisis after the anti-China movement? So can this problem Bangladesh can use West to because anti-China movement is a movement against the yellow people. Can Bangladesh use this movement and this pressure group from the West to pressure it up to Myanmar and other countries who mainly belong to the yellow people for solve this problem, or China will be reluctant and Myanmar will be reluctant about this? What do you think? Bangladesh can use this opportunity, or
Well,
it's another problem for Bangladesh?
frankly speaking, why I think that Bangladesh won't be able to do that, and there are pretty much good reason behind it. First of all, like in the international economy or coming to the international, I would say all those countries in the in this arena, mostly like countries react on what you can provide. Myanmar has a lot of things to provide compared to Bangladesh in terms of natural resources and the strategic position. In so, what happened last time when the Rohingya crisis was there? Mostly countries didn't back up Bangladesh, and there were. I personally think there are two reasons. First, Bangladesh has very less tourism. to offer. And if they agitate Myanmar, Myanmar shares border with China. Ch- Myanmar and Chinese relation can warm up, and they can have their military and other facilities over there in Myanmar. They can have their base, the camp, which obviously India and China doesn't really want. Sorry, India and the US doesn't really don't really want it. Secondly, I would say that our foreign policy has been very weak since our inception in 1971. Honestly speaking, like in the international politics, you have to have a camp. If you are a neutral, if you're having this neutral position, at times you have to suffer because there is obviously pros and cons to every single thing. If you remember, like Canada has faced a lot when they have, as per the extradition treaty, they had transferred Huawei CFO from Canada to US. They faced a lot of backlash for that one, but they had take it for the sake of friendship. So it's all about like how what you give and what you take over there. So if you're having like trying to have warm relation for everyone, what happens, like you don't have anyone coming for you from any of the camp because they say, you don't have, you are not lenient to me because today you're with me, tomorrow you're with another one else. Like Chinese involvement in Bangladesh is agitating India, and the same goes other way around. If India increases uh, their involvement, it agitates Beijing as well. So if you're maintaining a neutral relationship, that you have to face that one as well because they
Yeah,
have. Yeah, Myanmar has much more strategic to offer, both India, USA, and China.
yeah. Myanmar diplomacy and foreign policy and strategy actually much more stronger rather than Bangladesh. The world has already seen it. Bangladesh has some opportunity, but they can't use it properly. We can say it because this Rohingya crisis already many years, but they can't solve it. So we can say that Bangladesh actually failed in this in the world of diplomacy in the crisis of Rohingya. But
The
finally,
best
we
part for
think.
Bangladesh, what I think should have been, is start the process of assimilation of this Rohingya people, so that we can have more people in our workforce and we can easily utilize them. We have a lot of dividend in terms of population, but we are not being
Yeah,
able to
yesterday
easily
we
utilize
talked about
them
it.
as a
Yesterday in our live session, we talked about that Rohingya can be an asset for country because they are human being with a brain and two hands. So
Yeah,
they are actually human being. So if we can use them, maybe we can turn them in an asset for the country. But
yeah,
at this moment, you are just going another things that if you think that there is a movement of any anti-China movement around the world, and we find out that this is increasing around the world, and people also are agitated about China because of this virus, and far right
yeah,
group will use these things very easily, and they are using right now actually. So if this thing continue, would there is any chance that this anti-China movement can be a anti-white movement, anti
anti-China movement will be like anti-white movement.
all the peoples rather than white supremacist movement? This is
Anti-white supremacism, I really don't think so. There's any chance for that one at this point. Anti-white supremacists, because it's honestly speaking, it's China that has been singled out. Like there is Japan, there's Taiwan, there is Vietnam. Every single this year, they're also
only be
considered
okay if you
developing
think about the Japan, if you think about the any other countries like Korea, Japan, and other countries uh, there will be the innocent victim of this anti-China movement. What do you think about this?
I don't think they will be victim at all because they have been proved themselves as a very good ally. And if you see even in the on the top universities and the top researchers, all these Asians are mostly Korean, yeah, Chinese, Japanese over there. So they don't have, I would say, they don't have really uh, and that sort of security concern over the Japanese or the Korean people right now. And Japanese and Korean have already been alongside with the West. The people have been with the West, and they're taking all those, I would say, the Chinese bullying that's happening. They're taking their naval vessels as their shores. I won't say the shores, as their waters, and they're just taking all these things. They know that anytime any war happens, it will be Korea, Japan. They will have the first hit from China for sure with the nuclear missiles.
Okay, so I think we are almost in the end of our discussion about the anti-China movement in the West. I think everyone can understand that what will happen for South Asian countries. Hopefully, what do you think about them, and what is anti-China movement, and how is it going on? So we don't take any comment today because we have some technical problems, so we come late, and we're still now facing some technical problems, so we can't do it properly today. We are very sorry about this. I think from tomorrow we want try to develop this thing, and
Sure.
if you inspire us, all the people who are watching, I think we can continue this kind of series. So, any final remarks from Oscar?
Well, as for the final remark, like what I believe that like the mode of globalization is increasing the interdependence, and it's a wise decision is not to put all your eggs in one basket. So world has to shift a bit from China in terms of dependence issue, but if we think from anti-China movement that we can completely ignore China, that is not possible at all. So world will still be dependent on China. It will take a really long time to have this shift that we are thinking of at this point to go on.
Okay, finally, actually, as the HYD especially do a modern UN conference around the world, as you are the one of the manner from the first stage of Bangladesh, actually, or one of the prominent manner of Bangladesh. I do MUN also because HYD is a platform for MUN. So a lot of
Mhm.
people who are watching this video, actually, those people are related with HYD or they are related with MUN, actually. So, what do you think those people are going to having a conference, a model conference in the coming this year or next year? What if they are related with a country which is in the bargaining of China actually anti-China movement? So, what is the suggestion for them?
So, firstly, I would suggest them firstly to have a very good study on how the thing is going on. Like when we say China, it's usually it's the People's Republic of China we consider about. So you have to have the historical knowledge of the People's Republic of China and the Republic of China, how things go on. Because 1971, this one particular thing to be noted that in 1971, China was with Pakistan
Yes.
and was with Pakistan. And at that year, it really helped China to get the position in the United Nations as the representative of China. If you remember, China had this position for as a P5, one of the permanent five members, but that belonged to Republic of China all this time. But that shifted to People's Republic of China in 1971 when the General Assembly resolution passed that People's Republic of China is the sole representative of China. So, and also they have to go through how the relation has warmed up between United States and China as well. All this historical knowledge, history is over here is very important to understand how the things develop, how China has become such a strong economy, though it has been on the other side in the Cold War, which even Russia couldn't be in terms of economy. So there have these are the things that they need to study a lot so that they can have come up with the policies and have a fruitful debate and understand how the things going on, because you see like not all Western countries are like that much anti-China. There are some who are more, some who are less. Coming to the fact of US, I would say in 2001 when Bill Clinton finally in 2000 when Bill Clinton finally agreed to the point that inclusion of like to remove the trade barrier between US and China and include in WTO in 2001. He thought, like, as his lobbyist, that the trade deficit between China and US would reduce and US will have much more market. But what happened after, we all know. China could utilize all those like freedom that there are in the West, and they could totally undermine the intellectual property rights. Take you utilize all those technologies that get in China for hardware production, and then afterwards they have the boom. I would say they have stopped all those Western product within the China and have the Indian product in China. And then afterwards they have
Okay, I think some technical problem is going on with Oscar also still now. So hopefully from tomorrow we can solve all this problem and we can come to this live with more interactive way. So we are still developing. This is a testing session going on from HYD. So we have 2 episodes in every day at 3:30 and 9:30. So hopefully you will enjoy it, and we will try to develop in our upcoming days. If you have any suggestion or anything, any topics related to our to talk, or you want to hear about any topics, just inbox us in our pages, or you can comment here. We will try to ensure it. And this is a platform for manner actually. So HYD every day inviting different manner from different country of the world who are related with the HYD or not related with the HYD, to inspire the MUN movement around the world and inspire the manner of the world. So all the guests coming here are the manner. So if hope to see you tomorrow, and don't forget to see tomorrow's special session at 3:30 with some other people, and hopefully in the evening with me. So this for today. Thank you.